this down real quick, cause Nirvana, they weren't just some garage band trying to make noise. Nah, these dudes were a whole movement. They came out of nowhere like a quiet storm and flipped the whole rock scene on its head. One minute they're jamming in some small grungy dive, the next, boom, signed, sealed, and blowing up speakers everywhere. Their sound, iconic. Their rise, unstoppable. But just when it looked like the dream was solid, the cracks started showing. Cobain. Man, that dude had genius in his veins, but demons in his shadow. One day, he's just vibing with the band. Next day, he's talking royalties and wanting a bigger cut. Greed crept in, tension followed, and the band never hit the same rhythm again. Then came the real heartbreaker. Cobain gone, just like that, snatched away by addiction's cold hands.
Kurt was the poster boy. I said he's going to himself.
Him and his wife, Courtney, deep in that drug life like it was their full-time gig.
Junkie while I'm pregnant, when I'm a junkie too, and I know the minute that baby's out, I'm gonna go shoot up in celebratory fashion.
And when he passed, the chaos didn't stop. It just switched gears. Courtney stepped in, and let's just say, it wasn't all peace and grunge. It was lawsuits, label beef, and straight-up confusion about the band's future. But through all the smoke and heartbreak, Nirvana didn't fade. They became legends. Their legacy, untouchable. Their name, carved in music history like a battle scar.
Underground alternative grunge rock band from Seattle, Washington, or the outskirts of Seattle, Washington.
So buckle up, because we're about to unpack the raw, uncut story of Nirvana. And trust me, this ride's got more twists than a soap opera marathon. So flashback to Aberdeen, Washington, 1987, a sleepy town with way more trees than dreams. That's where a skinny, angsty kid named Kurt Cobain, born on February 20th, 1967, met this tall, chill dude, Chris Novoselic, born on May 16, 1965. They both went to Aberdeen High and vibed over loud music and hanging out near the Melvins practice space.
Well, he was this weird kid, and I was a weird kid, and we thought the world was weird, and so we gravitated towards each other.
Real small-town rebellion energy. Kurt was already plotting a band, but Chris, dude left him on red for like 3 years. Cold. But then, plot twist, Chris finally listens to Kurt's messy little demo tape from his project called Fecal Matter. And boom, just like that, the idea of a band is back on. First, they tried a goofy little Creedence Clearwater Revival tribute act called The Sellouts. Imagine Kurt Cobain banging the drums and Chris on vocals like looking out my back door. Yeah, it was short-lived, thank God. Fast forward to 1987, after a few more failed projects and enough drummer drama to make it a reality show, they finally land on Aaron Burkhart and start grinding for real. Now here's where it gets spicy. They ran through band names like your cousin goes through Instagram usernames. Skid Row, Pencap Chew, Bliss, Ted Ed Fred, each more chaotic than the last. But finally, Kurt decides on Nirvana, because in his words, I wanted something kind of beautiful.
Nirvana means freedom from pain and
suffering in the external world. That's just the Webster's dictionary.
And honestly, that's poetic coming from a guy whose last demo was literally called Fecal Matter. They hit their first gig as Nirvana on March 19, 1988, in a theater in Tacoma. But the name Nirvana? Yeah, that didn't come without its own drama. Some British band also called Nirvana came knocking like, excuse me, who do you think you are?
Matt, somebody's using our band name.
What band? Oh, Nirvana the band?
There's already a band with our band name.
Lawsuits flew, but eventually, the boys settled it out of court like true anti-corporate rebels forced into corporate nonsense. So boom, it's November 1988, and Nirvana's out here dropping their first ever single, a raw, fuzzed out cover of Shocking Blue's Love Buzz. They put it out with Seattle's own Sub Pop, the grunge mecca for all things loud, angsty, and slightly out of tune. It was the kind of track that made you go, wait, who are these dudes? Just a few months later, they slid into the studio with Jack and Dino to record what would be their first full-length grenade, Bleach.
By some luck, our guardian angel pointed us in the direction of Reciprocal Studios and Jack and Dino, who knows Jonathan Poneman, and Jack and Dino turned Jonathan Poneman on.
Bleach dropped in June '89, and man, it hit college radios like a wrecking ball through a dorm room wall. Dorm couches were flipping, guitars were being bought and poorly played. Nirvana wasn't mainstream yet, but they were making serious noise. And it wasn't just the music, it was the vibe. Dirty, loud, and real. Later that year, they dropped the Blue EP with Steve Fisk producing. But something was bubbling inside Kurt. In an interview, he goes, "Yeah, the early stuff was straight up rage. Now, I'm kind of feeling things, you know? Relationship drama, emotional wreckage, the whole 9 yards." Our boy was evolving from screamcore to sad boy pop punk real quick.
I think the whole thing was insane with Nirvana. Like in 1991, the band came out and like Geffen Records printed 50,000 copies.
By April 1990, Nirvana hit Smart Studios in Wisconsin with Butch Vig, who'd later become the guy for shaping their sound. But things were getting tense. Drummer Chad Channing wasn't vibing with the creative process. Or maybe the creative process wasn't vibing with him. Either way, dude dipped.
You're always contradicting us. Yes, Chad. Always. You're the next to go.
I'm next on the list, by the way.
But hold up, the drama ain't done. They record Sliver with Mudhoney's Dan Peters, tour with Sonic Youth, and then enter The Chosen One. September 1990, Buzz Osborne of the Melvins introduces them to this beast on the drums named Dave Grohl, born January 14, 1969. Grohl flies into Seattle, steps behind the kit, and within 2 minutes, Cobain and Novoselic are like, yup, he's the one. Just like that, the final Infinity Stone in the Nirvana gauntlet is in place.
Dave's solid, and he's a natural musician. I mean, he can play anything, guitar, bass, drums.
Now, Nirvana's done being indie darlings. Sub Pop couldn't afford to hold them anymore, and the big leagues were knocking. Then Susan Silver came into the picture, who managed Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. She hooks them up with legit music biz heavy hitters. And soon their demos are flying around LA like mixtapes in a high school parking lot. Labels were thirsty. Thanks to a strong push from Sonic Youth's Kim Gordon, Nirvana then signs with DGC Records in '90. And when they were inducted into the Rock Hall in 2014, Novoselic looked back and gave Susan Silver her flowers, thanking her for actually getting them through the music biz madness with some dignity.
Thank you, Susan Silver, for introducing us to the music industry properly.
So after signing to the big leagues, Nirvana went straight to work on their first major label album, Nevermind. They were offered a ton of producers, but the band was set on Butch Vig. They were picky, and rightfully so. For 2 whole months, the crew worked through a bunch of tracks. Some were old standbys like In Bloom and Breathe that had been kicking around since forever, while others like On a Plane and Stay Away didn't even have full lyrics until halfway through recording. Total chaos, but hey, they made it work. Now, after wrapping up the sessions, Vig and the guys set out to mix the album, but of course, it wasn't that easy. They were behind schedule and the first mixes just weren't cutting it. So in comes Andy Wallace to work his magic. And while Wallace made the album sound polished, the band not so thrilled about it.
So allegedly, Kurt Cobain hated the commercial releases and mixes and masters of Nevermind, which was released by Andy Wallace all the way back in 1991.
They felt like it was too clean for their grungy vibe. But hey, who was gonna argue with the success that followed? When Smells Like Teen Spirit then dropped, it was like a bomb going off. The track started picking up major airplay, thanks to the power of MTV, and soon enough, Nirvana's shows were packed to the brim. By Christmas 1991, Nevermind was selling a ridiculous 400,000 copies a week in the US. And then, the impossible happened. It dethroned Michael Jackson's Dangerous on the Billboard charts. Yeah, you heard that right. Nirvana was now officially running the show. By the time it was all said and done, Nevermind sold over 7 million copies in the US alone, and 30 million worldwide. Talk about a victory lap. But then, just when you thought things couldn't get crazier, Cobain decided to shake things up with the royalties. Up until this point, the band had been splitting the songwriting cash evenly. But Kurt, ever the creative genius, wanted to get a bigger slice of the pie, considering he was writing most of the music. Grohl and Novoselic were cool with that, until Cobain wanted the changes to be retroactive. Drama alert! After a week of heated tension, Kurt got his 75% cut. But let's just say the vibes in the band were never quite the same after that. Then, rumors started swirling that Nirvana might break up because of Cobain's health issues. They headlined the closing night of the 1992 Reading Festival. They snagged awards for Best Alternative Video and Best New Artist.
Say the winner? Nirvana!
But don't get too comfy, because the drama was far from over. Fast forward to 1994, Nirvana's first tour in 2 years. It was massive. They were unstoppable until they weren't. Their European tour hit a wall in March, and on March 4th, Courtney Love found Cobain unconscious in their hotel room in Rome after a bad mix of prescription drugs and alcohol. He was rushed to the hospital, and the rest of the tour, canceled. But that was just the beginning of the mess. Cobain's heroin addiction resurfaced, and after an intervention, he was sent to rehab. But in classic Kurt fashion, he escaped by scaling a 6-foot wall and hightailed it back to Seattle. Just wild.
And there's a famous story of him escaping by scaling a wall.
Then, in April 1994, Nirvana dropped out of the Lollapalooza 94 tour because of Cobain's health. Rumors swirled about the band breaking up, but that was nothing compared to what happened next. On April 8, 1994, just days after going missing, Kurt Cobain was found dead in his Seattle home from a self-inflicted shotgun wound. He had been dead for a few days before anyone even knew. Nirvana had officially fallen apart, and the music world was left reeling. The end of an era? No, it was a catastrophic twist nobody saw coming.
Stuck in a potted plant that had been dumped out.
Police officers had to break into the house to get to the body. They say this happened sometime yesterday.
Cobain's death was like a bombshell that shook the world to its core. The media went wild, and everyone had something to say about it.
Today, fans gathered outside Cobain's mansion, mourning the loss.
I never thought in a million years that something like this could happen.
Within hours, Nirvana albums were flying off the shelves, and sales surged, especially in the UK. Concert tickets for shows that never happened suddenly became hot commodities, selling for crazy prices. A public vigil for Kurt Cobain was held on April 10, 1994, at Seattle Center. Around 7,000 people gathered to mourn, proving just how deep the impact of his death was.
The worst crime I could think of would be to pull people off by faking it and pretending as if I'm having 100% fun. No, Kurt.
It wasn't just a rock star passing. It was like the end of an era. In the aftermath, Dave Grohl wasn't sitting around feeling sorry for himself. He quickly started a new band, Foo Fighters.
Because I didn't want people to think like, oh, that guy from Nirvana is trying to start another band. So I just called it Foo Fighters because it sounded like a group of people.
He and Chris Novoselic talked about possibly working together again. But Grohl knew it would be awkward for the new band, so Novoselic decided to go in a completely different direction, political activism. As for Nirvana's future, plans for a live album were scrapped. The emotional toll of putting out a posthumous project so soon after Cobain's death was just too much. Instead, DGC released MTV Unplugged in New York in November 1994. The album shot to #1 on the Billboard charts and earned them a Grammy for Best Alternative Music Album at the 1996 ceremony. Talk about a fitting tribute. Then, the drama just wouldn't let up. In 1997, Novoselic, Grohl, and Courtney Love, Cobain's wife, formed Nirvana LLC to handle the band's projects. Things seemed to be moving forward until Love dropped a bombshell. She sued to dissolve the LLC, claiming that Cobain was Nirvana and that Grohl and Novoselic were just his sidekicks.
I do own Nirvana with my daughter, and because of tax laws, I have to give the money to the sister, Kim Cobain.
She also argued that she signed the partnership agreement under bad advice. Grohl and Novoselic weren't having it, though, and countersued, wanting her out and someone else to represent Cobain's estate. Now, this was a legal showdown no one expected, but just when it seemed like things were headed to court, they announced a settlement the day before the trial was supposed to start.
I mean, look, if you can, give up a grudge like that, because there was a lot of crap that went on, I think anyone could do it.
The result? A best-of compilation, Nirvana, dropped in November 2002, with the never-before-heard track, You Know You're Right. It debuted at #3 on the Billboard chart. But wait, there's more. A massive 45-track box set called With the Lights Out came out in 2004, featuring all kinds of Cobain demos, rough rehearsals, and live performances. And for the cherry on top, A selection of tracks from the box set, Sliver, The Best of the Box, was released in 2005. Talk about keeping the legacy alive, even through all the legal drama. In April 2006, Courtney Love, always the woman in the center of the storm, made a big move. She sold off 25% of Nirvana's song catalog to Primary Wave for a cool $50 million. Now, she wasn't just selling out like a rock star cliche. Nah, she swore to Nirvana's fan base she wouldn't just hand over the music to the highest bidder.
Singer Courtney Love is planning to sell some of the items that belong to her late husband. Love says she plans to auction the possessions and give a portion of the proceeds to charity.
We're gonna keep it real, folks. Tasteful, true to the spirit of Nirvana, and taking it places it's never been, she promised. But come on, once money's involved, how much can you really trust that, right? But here's where it gets extra spicy. Fast forward to 2012, Dave Grohl, Krista Novoselic, and Pat Smear are on stage with Paul McCartney at 12-12-12, the concert for Sandy Relief, debuting a brand new track called Cut Me Some Slack. A performance this big, legendary, no doubt.
We wouldn't be here if it weren't for Paul and for Ringo.
They were back, and just when you thought that was peak nostalgia, bam, 2013 rolls around, and they're back together again, performing with McCartney in their hometown of Seattle. Yeah, you guessed it, 15 years had passed, but the magic was still there. The cherry on top? Nirvana's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014.
I'm already crying, because he'd be so proud. He'd say he wasn't, but he would be.
And at that ceremony, they weren't just standing there. Oh no, they're up on stage with Joan Jett, Kim Gordon, St. Vincent, and Lord, belting out hits like it's their first show ever. Goosebumps, pure rock history.
Grandma Wendy, Mr. Grohl. Come on, David and Crispin.
And then comes January 2025, Fire Aid Benefit in Los Angeles.
And tonight, some of the world's biggest stars have hit the stage at the Fire Aid Benefit concert in LA, raising funds to help rebuild the city after those devastating fires.
For the first time in 5 years, they're back together with St. Vincent, Kim Gordon, Joan Jett, and Violet Grohl, adding their voices to the mix. And just when you thought it couldn't get any bigger, they stormed Saturday Night Live for the 50th anniversary, performing Smells Like Teen Spirit with none other than Post Malone. If you weren't already in awe of these rock legends, you were now. But let's not kid ourselves. Nirvana's legacy is no accident. The impact, huge. In 2003, Mojo inducted them into the Hall of Fame 100. And in 2004, Rolling Stone placed them at number 27 on their 100 Greatest Artists of All Time list. They even called Kurt Cobain the 12th best guitarist of all time. It's like they were rock gods walking among us, and we were lucky enough to witness it. Now let's get personal, cause let's face it, the drama behind the scenes is just as good as the music. Krista Novoselic married Shelly Hirkis in 1989, but that ended in 1999. Then in 2004, he married Darbury Ain Stendaroo.
And I just kind of wanted to build this home for myself, because my home growing up had fallen apart, so I wanted to build a home.
And now they're living the simple life on a farm near Deep River, Washington. Chris, the flying fanatic, became an FAA licensed pilot. Yeah, he's a rock star, but he's also out there living his dream of flying planes and studying geology. And to top it all, he's standing tall on a net worth of $80 million. The guy's basically got it all. But then there's Cobain. Oh man, Cobain. Kurt lived the kind of life that would make your head spin.
Kurt wasn't really the tortured artist, like the sulking, tortured person. Like, he was really funny person.
Married Courtney Love in 1992, and bam, their daughter Frances Bean was born the same year. But talk about a mess. Cobain and Love were both deep in the world of drugs. We're talking heroin, the whole deal. Love was even using drugs while she was pregnant.
Complete obscurity and just being the #1 band in the world. So I do things like withdraw, drink. I'm lucky I had beer and wine.
Frances Bean was taken from them after birth because, well, they were unfit parents. The whole thing was a train wreck. Kurt was also one of the few who wasn't afraid to live his truth. He was bisexual and proud of it, even admitting that if he hadn't married Courtney, he'd have lived his whole life openly gay. Cobain used to wear feminine clothes growing up, and he didn't hide it. But of course, the drugs caught up to him. He didn't make it to 28. He passed away at 27, one of the most tragic losses in rock history. At the time of his death, Cobain had a net worth of $50 million. But here's the thing, his death didn't end Nirvana. Far from it. The music lived on. Nirvana's legacy didn't just survive, it thrived. The band may have broken up, but its impact, it just kept growing. Sure, Cobain's gone, but Nirvana is still living large, and no one's ever gonna forget them.